right, guys, now we're going to talk about graphing your direct observation data. So that is things like your 2 weeks of scatter plot and your 3 weeks of ABC. So you need to get those things ready and in front of you because you're going to be spending a lot of time looking at them. Now, this graphing is going to take a little bit longer than the mass because we have more data to work with, but it shouldn't take that long because I've created the graphs for you. So you're going to want to download the Behavior Direct Observation Graphs Excel file from this week's module and have your scatter plot and your ABC ready to go. So if you look down here, we have a bunch of different tabs, and each tab has places for you to input data and the resulting graph. So we've got behavior, antecedent, consequence. Our ABCs of behavior, right? Then we've got frequency, location, duration, intensity. Those are those principles of ABA that we talked about earlier this semester. Some other things we're tracking are staff, time of day, day of the week. So let's go ahead and go back to the one we're starting with, which is behavior. So if you look, this is a very simple graph. I am not super great at Excel. I know enough to be dangerous as a behavior analyst. So if you have a better way of doing this, feel free. This way works for me, and I think it's pretty easy. So the first thing I did was put down the behaviors that I was tracking. Now I put 5 behaviors here. Most of you did not track 5 behaviors. In fact, I wanted you to track 3 or less. But that doesn't matter. You're just going to put your behaviors here. So you're going to replace my behaviors with your behaviors. And then you're going to look through your scatter plot, look through your ABC, figure out how many times these things were happening. And you're going to put that number there. So right now, in this data set, we've got a student who ran 5 times. They hit 8 times. They spit 2 times. When you update this graph with your own data, as soon as you click out of it, just like the mass, it's going to update the graph itself. And you can change the students' names by clicking there if you want to. So you can already tell from looking at this graph, we can tell that hitting is a big problem. Spitting and property destruction, probably not as big of a problem as the other 3, and especially not the hitting. So that's the information we want to know here. Which of these behaviors we're tracking is the big bad? Which is the one that's happening the most often compared to the others? So you're going to want to put your behaviors here, and then how many times you saw them happen there. Our next tab we're going to click on is antecedents. And if you look, it's the same thing. I've put a list in the A column of common antecedents. And then all you do is you go through your ABC. You probably won't find this on scatterplot, so look through your 3 weeks of ABC for each antecedent. Now your antecedents might look different than mine, and that's just fine. It doesn't matter. You just want to write down the antecedents in the A column of the behaviors that you saw. And then in the B column, write how many times you saw them. So denial of attention. That was the antecedent 3 times. Denial of an item was the antecedent 3 times. Academic direction was the antecedent 7 times. Look through your ABC data and figure out what your antecedents were and how many times they preceded a behavior. And just like everything else, when you put your own data in here, the chart will change. So it'll be your data, your chart, not mine. So our next one is frequency. How many times is this happening for each behavior? So I put 3 on here because most people were tracking 3 behaviors or less. So you might want to just put what each behavior was. I said behavior 1, I changed it to hitting. Behavior 2, we'll change it to running, whatever your student was doing, whatever you're taking data on. And then week 1 and week 2 were scatter plots. So look at your scatter plot. See how many times it happened. Happened twice the first week, 7 times the second week. And then for weeks 3, 4, and 5, that's your 3 weeks of ABC data. So look at that and look at each one. That's going to tell you how many times each week the behavior happened. So again, when you put your data in, it's going to update with your data instead of mine. So it will be your graph, and you may want to change this. Instead of behavior 1, I put hitting. Instead of behavior 2, put running, put whatever it is that you're tracking. But that's all you do. You just pop it in there. The same exact thing for consequences. So again, you're going to go back to your ABCs because that's where you took data on your consequences. What were your consequences? Write them here in column A. And then in column B, you just mark down how many times that was the consequence. So in this one, 11 times a verbal redirection was the consequence. Make this match your own data. And again, when you put your data in, this chart will update. Another thing we like to track, just because it can give us some good information, is the location. So this was a checkoff box on your checkoff ABC form. So that was weeks 4 and 5 ABC. Look through those and see if you have see what data you have in terms of where the behavior occurred. Now, again, you can change these to match your situation. And then you just write down how many times the behavior happened in that area, and this will update. Same thing for staff. Sometimes this can give us some interesting information. If the behavior always occurs around one staff member, then maybe there's an issue there. So again, in column A, I just put the staff people that work with the student, and then in column B, I wrote how many times that person was involved when the behavior happened, when the kid hit. He hit the teacher 3 times. He hit parent number 2 9 times. And when you put your data in, it's going to upgrade this. It'll update it so that your chart will show you who was involved. The next one is duration. And some of you tracked this, some of you didn't. That's fine. If you tracked it, it would have been on your ABC data sheet. How long the behavior episode happened. It was on the top right hand was behavioral episode. So you would just figure out how long it happened. It started at 9 o'clock. It ended at 9:18. That means it was 18 minutes long. So you just write down, and in this one, and I did it like this. Here's our behavioral incidents. There were 15 total. And then for each one, I wrote how long it lasted. And it gives you a little graph like this. We can see that overall, they're lasting a few minutes, but sometimes it goes up to nearly, an hour and 20 minutes? Crazy things like that. Most of the time it's under 10, but he has his moments. So if you tracked duration, this is where you would graph that. Intensity, again, this is tracked by some of you on your ABC checkoff sheet. I put a little rubric for hitting. No mark, a mark that lasts less than 5 minutes, a mark that lasts more than 5 minutes, broken skin, and then I wrote down how many times the behavior was that intense. So 7 times out of 8, he didn't leave a mark. So maybe this hitting behavior isn't as severe as I thought it was. But again, you just write down how many times, if he left a bruise 5 times, you're going to put a 5 here because he left a mark that lasted longer than 5 minutes. And automatically the chart will update. And then our last one over here is just the time of the day that it's happening and the day of the week it's occurring. So I put my times of the days right here and the days of the weeks right here. So you can see, and again, you're going to put your data in here. Go through your scatter plot. Go through your ABC. If it happened between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning, you put that right here. And what happens is it's going to graph it right here. Something's going on in this baby's morning. That's a problem. I don't know what it is. We also need to look at where he is at 8 o'clock in the morning, when he gets his medicine, things like that. But there's something to this. And then again, days of the week. Which day of the week is the behaviors occurring? You just go through your ABC and your scatter plot and you just count them up. How many of the behaviors that you have data on happen on a Monday? How many of them happen on a Wednesday? Put that there. We can tell that Monday is a rough day for this kid. Monday's a rough day for me too. I get it. Thursdays are also a little rough. Now you may not see a pattern for every graph you do, but you're going to see a pattern somewhere. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for those patterns because that's going to help us predict behavior. If your consequence, in this case, consequence over a quarter of the time, it's verbal redirection. He's given choices, he's given a break, he's given a different task. Guess what? Choices, given a break, given a different task, removal from group, taken to the OT, sent to the office, parent called, restraint or ignored. All of these things together equal escape from task. Only 26 plus 3, only 29% of the time is he redirected back to class. So a possible function of this kid's behavior based on our ABC data is escape from task demands. That's where this analyzing the data piece becomes so important, and we can't look at it if all the data is on a file on the computer or a piece of paper in our filing cabinet. It needs to be in a graph where we can see it and analyze it. So this is how you complete your direct observation behavior graphs. If you do not have all of this data, that's fine. If you didn't track duration, you didn't track duration. If you didn't track frequency, you didn't track frequency. That's okay. I don't want you to turn in false data. I just want you to graph the data that you have. I know some of you work with a student once a week for half an hour, so your data is a little sparse. I know some of you have them all day long and you turned in 11 sheets of ABC for the first week and it grew from there. That's fine too. The more data you have, the better your FBA is going to be. But you may not have all of these different things. That's fine. If you have it, put it on here because it's going to make your FBA stronger. And again, we're going to take these graphs and we're going to put them in your FBA report. So the more you have, the better it looks. So go through your ABCs, go through your scatter plots, and go on each tab and fill out that information. And it will automatically give you a graph. So when you're done with all the tabs, you just go ahead and save it and then upload it in the space we have this week to upload your graphs. And that's it. You just graph 5 weeks of behavioral data.